Welcome back to Insight. Our special guest, PJ Patterson, Prime Minister, former man who has created a record, and here he has written a book, My Political Journey, and clearly he could say our political journey, because a journey that if you read it, you'll find you having, even as end user of the information, and including myself, who provided a lot of this information as we created history in Jamaica, politically and otherwise. Sir, your book, you weren't afraid to deal with certain things, and I noted it. Michael Manley had become ill. I had the pleasure of meeting him even on his bed. You were thought of as you had earned your keep. You were dutiful, you were loyal, so therefore anyone challenging you really ought not to have. Did you get that feel that people thought that you were the man now, you had paid your dues?
Certainly within the parliamentary group, among our mayors and our councillors, within the National Executive Council, there was a general acceptance that I was the logical and undisputed successor for Michael Manley. Michael and I had a clear understanding of that. In the book, you will read that 1 year before he actually retired, we had had a very special conversation when the nature and extent of his illness was discovered. And he had indicated that he was going to be stepping down by the conference of 1991. But in the final stages, I said to him, the party is not ready for this. And therefore, we can't put the party into shock. And in fact, if you do, and people come to you and ask you to reconsider, including me, and you're going to reconsider, then let us save ourselves the agony from now.
Okay.
So we decided it would not be on in 1991. And as is set out in the book, the strain on him, without the kind of support and assistance that I had provided, didn't help his medical situation. At that time, I was the Minister of Finance, and I set out in the book the reticence which I had all during my political engagement of taking on that particular role based on advice that I had received from someone who really understood the tension which can arise between ministers of finance and prime ministers. So it was all to be smooth sailing. And then came the question of the shell waiver. And it's very difficult to explain in a few terms what
So
happened.
Can I help there, sir? The shelf waiver, as it really is, whether you're told cabinet and all that kind of stuff. I read it and I was there. And
Yeah.
I'm grateful
Yeah.
to hear your side.
Yeah.
And if people really want to get into it, they can get the book. But here's the part that I saw.
Yeah.
When you decided to step down,
Yes.
you didn't absent yourself from Parliament. You went to the backbench.
Oh, yes.
You understand the pictorial, that picture? Do you understand we, the journalists, looking down at you people and see the PJ Patterson,
I must
dapper
say,
as he was,
I
and
must,
went to the backbench?
I must say I enjoyed the backbench considerably for the few weeks that I was afforded that privilege. But
You said it hurt you.
It was
was the most
yes,
hurtful thing.
Yes, it hurt me very badly in a personal way. In a personal way. Because the relationship between Michael Manley and myself had always been a close one, and where we had been able to work together in harmony at all times, and where my loyalty to him as leader of the party and my affection and admiration for him as a person was being challenged. And unfortunately, it also coincided with a very difficult period in my life, because my mother, who by then was living with me
Here.
at
Yes.
Uhuru,
Yes.
was going through the
Final
final stages as she prepared for transition. So it was a double
Yes.
blow. But I'd say this. The family tells a story that in my days of infancy, when I heard people in the house discussing matters pertaining to me, I would say God moves in a mysterious way,
The wonders to perform.
the wonders to perform.
Yes.
And in retrospect, although it was a period of agony, the fact that there was a contest for the leadership of the party, in which I was able to command tremendous support throughout the island and in the constituencies, put me in good stead, because it gave me the stamp of authority
Yes.
to
Your own
lead
mandate.
the party
Yes.
on the basis of a democratic choice, as distinct from appearing to be an anointed one.
Let me place you back in a I think it was at Jamaica College during a debate with Portia Simpson Miller. The question was asked of both of you. I don't know if I was the one who asked the question. I won't hold editorial.
Correct you slightly. It was in a studio in the first ever face-to-face interview and debate which
Yes.
has ever taken place.
Where was this, sir? 'Cause I know it was a cramped corner. It was very tight.
Yes. It was a studio interview.
And you protected her, sir. And you mentioned in the book, it was,
Yes.
you protected her.
Yes.
At that point, the writing was on the wall.
Yeah. Simply put, Portia was and has always been very, very special and precious to me. From the outset, I regarded her as a gem and a person with tremendous potential. And I knew that her time would come. I benefited from a process in the party which commenced when I became an organizer, which allowed what I would regard as political maturation. I wanted to make sure that she also would benefit from that process, and anything that would damage her would damage me and damage the party.
Wow.
So that I felt it was an obligation to offer the protection, the coverage that would enable her to acquire all the knowledge and the understanding which would be required when her time would come, as it eventually did in 2006.
How divisive it was, what challenges it had for the party and the different supporters. I remember them well now. I remember some people on this side, some people on this side. How deep was that divide? How fractious was it?
Having been a major player in the period of the 70s, one where I was a vice president, the one with greatest seniority, where I was the deputy prime minister. I believe that divisions within the party and the government proved to be electorally costly. And in reviewing whether I should have continued in the political process or not, I came eventually to the decision that I had to, because I owed it to the people from which I spring to make a continuing contribution. And I was determined that I was not going to allow the divisions within the party to continue and the divisions within the government to exist. And therefore, those who did not support me, I made sure that they were accorded positions of responsibility commensurate with their skills. And in particular, a number of those who had been the most vigorous antagonists, once I had settled the team, turned out to be very loyal and very energetic and very efficient members of the team.
I'm going to ask you to hold here, sir, because I've spoken to a gentleman who's told me that he's able to give me some extension on this program, because it's not every day that you can come and get PJ Patterson to get this story, a part of the history of Jamaica. So we'll be right back on Insight.